Today, I'm comparing the legendary Nike Invincible line with the brand new Nike Vomero Plus. The Vomero Plus is the supposed successor to the Invincible line, so I want to see if that's really the case, look at the differences, the similarities, and then ultimately get to the bottom of, is it really worth upgrading, or are you better off getting a bargain Invincible? And whether this shoe really reclaims the throne from the Invincible as one of the most versatile running shoes in the game right now. The Nike Invincible was a proper trailblazer. I think we've kind of got used to running shoes coming out in quite incremental upgrades now, but when this shoe came out, it was unlike what a lot of everyday runners had ever really seen before. People have been crying out for a non-plated, fully ZoomX trainer, and then this was what Nike gave us, and they completely delivered. But the response to this shoe when it came out was crazy. I remember Seth James Moore's video on this exact shoe. He was raving about the bounce in the midsole of this shoe like I'd never really heard him or many other running shoe reviewers discuss before, and that's ultimately what made me pull the trigger on this shoe. And it was far and away the most expensive running shoe that I'd ever bought. For me, the original Invincible needed a short breaking period, but then after that I really felt the midsole magic that everyone was talking about. This shoe was the bounciest running shoe I'd ever ran in. That was really the MO of the Invincible. It was just crazy bounce wherever you wanted to use it. So that was long runs, everyday running, recovery. You could use it in a race or workout, but obviously we'd been introduced to carbon plated shoes at that time and they'd become the zenith of race day footwear. For me, this original Invincible was one of two really trailblazing running shoe models of that era. The Invincible obviously led the way for max stack, super cushion shoes. You see it in the Super Blast, the Mag Max, the Brooks Glycerin Max. And the other one at that time was the Saucony Endorphin Speed, which obviously was the forefather of the Super Trainer, which I've discussed in depth before. So Nike then followed up the Invincible with the Invincible 2, and it was very much a, if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of update. The shoe retained a lot of its identity while just having some mainly upper focused updates. Then there was the Invincible 3, which was kind of like the Dark Knight Rises of the trilogy and did have a couple of issues, particularly within the upper and the heel collar. But then the line went quiet. When was the next shoe coming? And so over the next year, there was leaks online of a supposed Invincible 4, which seemed to be, again, a smaller incremental update, mainly focused on remedying the issues that the 3 had, while still building on the notoriously good ZoomX platform. So it came as a bit of a shock to a lot of runners, including myself, that this line of running shoes was being cancelled in 2025. I think a lot of people were pretty dumbfounded. Why cancel one of Nike's most popular lines? But it turns out that they had a replacement in the can. And that was this bad boy, the Nike Vomero Plus. Now, I've done a whole video reviewing this. It was my last video. So if you want to go really in depth on my thoughts on the shoe, then just go and watch that video and hopefully enjoy it. But to boil the sentiment down into like the quickest possible phrase that I can, this is a sick shoe. It's really, really good. I really like this shoe. It's my favorite running shoe of the year so far. But is it really a successor to the Invincible? Are they like distant cousins, or are they kind of like blood brothers? Having ran in these shoes, I want to compare them, give you my thoughts, and then tell you what the best choice for you is. So the original Invincible had 36.6 millimeters of stack in the heel, which was a lot for the time. I mean, really, it was a lot. And by the time the Invincible 3 came out, that had become 40 millimeters of stack. But the Nike Vomero Plus has 45 millimeters of stack. So we're talking a nearly 10 millimeter increase from this shoe to this shoe. And I'll say for sure that you definitely do feel the extra height. This shoe even looks taller. That said though, I mean, I've put hundreds of kilometers on in the original Invincibles, so this shoe is an elderly citizen, so you got to forgive it for shrinking a little bit. But I don't think Nike are trying to hide how tall this shoe is. The Invincible line has always been a very modern kind of running shoe. It's always been about the latest technologies, the newest foam, and the most you can get of it. It's a unapologetically maximalist shoe. So I would say that, like, ideologically, this shoe really follows on in that line of thinking, being a maximalist shoe that adopts new technologies. Because Nike can be known for their stubbornness, like, for example, the drop in these shoes. Nike have long maintained a 10 or near 10 millimeter drop in all of their shoes. And so that kind of thinking as a brand has sometimes got people looking at Nike as a company that rests on their laurels in the running space, when other brands like Adidas maybe are looking to push running science a little bit more. I think that Nike have been maybe at times confused between that kind of lifestyle brand slash actual sports where athlete focused approach. I think that actually with the restructuring of their running lines, Nike seems to have gained back some of the lost ground that they had, as they seem to lose their way over the last 2 or 3 years, and a lot of the rival brands really caught up with them. From the moment that this was released, there was no doubt that Nike were at the top of the world with running, and I would actually say that from this point onwards, it seemed that a shoe like the Invincible was replicated many times and eventually replicated better by those shoes like the Super Blast, which went on to be not just cult classics because they were from ASICS, smaller brands, actually superseding, I think, the abilities of the original. And I love this shoe, so it pains me to say that. But that said, I think the higher stack on the Vomero Plus than the Invincible isn't necessarily the only indicator of how stable these running shoes are. So I would actually say that the Invincible Plus has an inherently more stable ride than all of the shoes in the Invincible line, which were always, as discussed, about that crazy bounce. There's definitely a slight peeling back of the wildness of these shoes in this. To touch back on the drop that I was talking about before, Nike stubbornness, this is the shoe with 9mm, this is a shoe with 10mm. You don't notice any difference. The weight of the first Invincible was 314 grams, which was incredible because you'd hardly notice just how heavy the shoe was thanks to the ridiculous amount of underfoot foam. You'd hardly notice how heavy this shoe actually was, especially compared to modern running shoes, just because of how springy and bouncy that underfoot foam formulation was. So then by the time the Invincible 3 released, they'd gotten the shoe down to 284 grams, which was a massive achievement, and they've actually kept the same weight in this shoe, which I think is really, really interesting. So even though this is a shoe with more stack height, more padding, and just a generally noticeably more chunky shoe, it's still maintained the same weight as the Invincible 3. But what I would offer here is that if weight is something that you're really thinking of, for me personally, weight in running shoes is most important on your race days. And I think for a shoe like these two shoes are trying to be, which is a shoe for most days, not those once or twice a year days, weight is less important because it's not about the advantages. I think ultimately these shoes are both focused on making those 80% of your runs more enjoyable by making them bouncier and easier. And I don't think that weight is as much of a factor in those kind of runs, whereas when you're on your race day, 10 grams could be a couple of seconds, an incremental gain. It could be the difference between PR and not. The upper on the original Invincible was, for me, unfortunately, its only downside, really. I repeatedly got hot spots in this shoe, running on longer, hotter days. I struggled with it a little bit, and having run mainly at the back end of summer in this shoe, as I've had it now, as we move into colder, darker training, unfortunately, at the moment, I would say that I think that the Vomero Plus can handle heat a little bit better than the Invincible line. I think the upper is slightly more airy, and there are a lot of similar materials in both. I would say that you can actually feel on the tongue of both shoes and the padding a really, really similar texture. And I'm talking about this shoe, which came out nearly 5 years ago, and this shoe, which came out a couple of months ago. So those similarities are there, but I think that the mesh element of this upper here just controls airflow a little bit better in hotter temperatures and doesn't trap heat underfoot. The thickness in padding on both shoes is really noticeable. These are two shoes that are really well padded all the way around. What's noticeable here for me, and always was noticeable on the Invincible, was the heel cup. The foam at the back of the original Invincible juts out further than the silhouette of the upper, and that always facilitated me on the longer, more difficult, more challenging runs when I was falling back onto my midfoot and heel. I felt really, really supported there. What's actually happened with the Vomero Plus is that the foot bed has gotten wider, so that's helped make the shoe more stable, but it doesn't necessarily reach out at the back in the same way. I would say that both shoes facilitate forefoot, midfoot and rear foot strikers. But if you are solely a rear foot striker, I think the Invincible models do give a little bit more support. That said, this shoe is massive and it has a larger surface area for your foot to land on. But the great thing is the Vomero Plus doesn't feel flat despite the really kind of wide base of the shoe. That's a massive issue that I had with the Super Blast, and I felt like my strides weren't clicking into gear because the shoe wasn't rocketed enough. This shoe is nicely rocketed. I think the drop is a big part of that, and the original Invincible definitely has that DNA as well. Okay, when you look at these shoes, which is better, which is worse? Ultimately, I think it comes down to the ride of the shoe. That's always, you can talk about stats all day, right? But the ride is the thing that matters. And I'm going to do my best to describe the differences in feeling between these shoes, because the technical bit tells you that this has a really similar Zoom X to what Nike's race day shoes used. It's the P-Bax formulation, and this shoe has a TPE Zoom X, which is kind of a stolen valor kind of Zoom X, which isn't quite the same. But I think that the difference in the rides in these two shoes is that the Invincible is a little bit more unpredictable, more bouncy, and it takes a little bit longer to tame and get used to. It took me a little while to get used to the original Invincible. I clicked with the Vomero Plus instantly. Literally from the first minute of running in the shoe, I knew I was going to love it, and I continued to love it all the way through many, many more kilometers so far, and I hopefully will just run this thing into the ground. This shoe is about reliability. It is about being a shoe that you can put on, go for your long recovery and daily kind of running, and get it done comfortably. That is what the Vomero Plus is about. I think the Invincible was a little bit more versatile. So weirdly enough, my half marathon PB was actually ran in the Invincible. I hope to break that PB in December when I'm running the first goal race half marathon I've ran in a few years. But that PB was set in these shoes. And so I think that testifies to the fact that the Invincible definitely has a little bit more versatility thanks to that slightly more unpredictable element. The Vomero Plus I wouldn't reach for a race. I think that it depends also whether you're looking to build a rotation or not. If you're looking for one running shoe, then I think go for an Invincible. If you're looking for a shoe that's part of a rotation, and that can even be a 2-shoe rotation, like I said in my last video, this accompanied with the carbon plated shoe, you are sorted for every single kind of run. Basically do 80% of your running in this, and then your absolute hardest workouts and your races in your carbon plated shoe. Set it and forget it. You're sorted there. So if you have an Invincible now and are wondering whether to upgrade, I would say this. Run the Invincible into the ground. Literally kill it, murder it, run it until it cannot run no more without making you injured. Try not to give in to the crazy buying cycle of running shoes that I think we all fall victim to. Because the Invincible in 1, 2 and 3 is a great shoe and really, really worth getting your money's worth out of it. But then the moment you wring all that magic out of the Invincible, head straight to this shoe and you won't be disappointed. If you don't have either of these shoes, I would recommend picking up the Invincible Plus. I think this is a fantastic shoe for everyday runners. I think this is the kind of shoe that most people are going to enjoy. It's a crowd pleaser. I am not a particularly fast runner. I'm not naturally gifted runner. I have to work hard to hit paces that come easy to some people. And a shoe like this really, really helps because it makes those boring slog runs where I'm getting up the mileage easier and more fun. And then to answer the final question, is this a successor to this? I would say absolutely. Beyond all the stats, beyond the fact that the Invincible 3 weighs the same as the Vomero Plus, beyond the fact that they have a very similar drop, beyond the fact that there's a clear stack height increase, it's as if this would be the 4, and the similarities between this shoe and what the Invincible 4 was going to be. I think that this shoe retains something a bit bigger than that, and I know it's silly because we're only actually talking about shoes, but if you've had these shoes, then it's worth knowing. I think that the identity of this shoe has transferred now into this line of running shoes. I think ultimately these shoes are for people who want to enjoy daily miles. It's not just about getting them done. It's about making them fun, bouncy. You can just glide along with these shoes, feeling the bounce, letting the shoes do a bit more of the work for you than maybe a normal, more low profile pair of running shoes would. It's about that maximalist high stack, new tech, new foam sort of ideology while still maintaining the comfort, because ultimately these aren't conventionally race day shoes. So there are my thoughts. I think that's pretty much everything. As you can tell, I really like these kind of shoes. If you could subscribe, that would be great. Or like the video or anything. I feel weird saying it. It's a bit bizarre, but yeah. And yeah, just thanks so much. I hope you have a good day, and I hope you enjoy running in one or either or none of these shoes. So yeah, see ya.